Please welcome Charles Cascio.
Thank you, Patrick. Those of you familiar with educational testing service probably will not come as any shock to you to realize how surprising it is for a group to actually applaud when somebody from ETS shows up. But we have our ways of getting people to love us. We got into this conference by looking up everybody's SAT score first, and then just sort of making an offer that people couldn't refuse. Now, in all seriousness, it's a pleasure for me to be here as a representative from Educational Testing Service, a company that most of you probably have experienced in at least one way, and probably several ways, through the large-scale testing and high-stakes testing that we've been doing for 60 years. The SAT, GREs, TOEFL, TOEIC, all of those, plus about 15 state tests that are now being implemented under No Child Left Behind, are all part of ETS and part of the ETS legacy. But as you can see from the title here, this is about ETS becoming a 60-year-old new company. And that's what I want to talk with you about today and give you just a quick look about the evolution of a business unit that I am fortunate enough to be the head of. It's called the Interactive Learning Business Unit. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how Interactive Learning Business Unit came to be at a company like ETS, how it's going to operate, and what interactive learning will deliver with a particular focus on how we utilize our substantial research and development division to help drive everything that we do. So first, a few facts. ETS is a world leader in educational testing and research. It has been for 60 years. We distribute 25 million plus tests worldwide annually. We have an R&D division of over 700 staff members. Many of them are world leaders in different areas of studying teaching and learning, how education is driven, different kinds of areas where education takes place. And you can find ETS researchers quoted and noted in major magazine articles and books all the time. That's one of the things that ETS is known for. And as I said, 700 out of the 2,600 employees at ETS are in our R&D division. ETS as an organization is a not-for-profit organization. We have a commitment to addressing issues, raising awareness, and finding solutions. Since the year 2000, ETS has been on a significant upturn in terms of its growth, and I'll explain how that happened. We've doubled our revenues during that time, and again, being a not-for-profit, what that means is we're able to use the revenues that we generate to drive different areas of education, and that relates directly to the Interactive Learning Unit and how it came about. Okay? Everything that ETS does, including the Interactive Learning Strategic Business Unit, is directly tied to our mission, which is to promote learning and support education for all people worldwide. All right, so those are a few facts about traditional ETS, but this is not your parents' ETS. This is a new time for this company, and I want to tell you how we got to where we are today. The historical turning point was the year 2000. At that time, Kurt Landgraf arrived as the president and CEO of ETS. There have only been 6 presidents of ETS during its 60-year history. All of them have come out of academia, with the exception of Kurt. Kurt came to ETS after being the chief operating officer for DuPont Pharmaceuticals, the chief executive officer for DuPont Europe, and the chief executive officer for DuPont Merck. So he had a strong business background. But Kurt also had a personal commitment to education that stems from his own background, and he has illustrated that commitment throughout his career, even when he was in the business sector. And so it made a natural kind of a choice for the ETS board to pick Kurt to come into the company in 2000 when revenues at the company had flattened, and a lot of the good work that ETS had been known for over the years was starting to stall a little bit because there wasn't revenue growth. We couldn't do as much as we wanted to do in some of those mission areas, and they needed somebody with a business orientation to come in and make a significant difference in the organization. Kurt arrived in August of 2000. I was fortunate enough to come in October of 2000. He asked me to join him. I've known Kurt for a long time, worked with him on a couple of projects. My background has always been in education, his in business, and so it gave us a good combination to bring to ETS and try to change the culture a little bit. The immediate impact was that there was a cultural difference that was not necessarily accepted through the organization. We had an organization that was used to doing things a certain way for 50 some odd years at that point. Okay, and now you have people coming in that are saying, look, we're going to take more of a business orientation to what we're doing. Okay, and you got these folks at ETS that have been there for a long time going, wait a second, we're based on an academic model, and we don't know if we're comfortable with this business orientation. So it took some time and it took a little bit of work, but you could start to see people believe in what Kurt's vision was and start seeing the company change from being static to dynamic. You started to see the beginnings of diversification, exploration of capabilities, and increased impacts on markets. Okay, Kurt encouraged experimentation from the start. He encouraged people to look at learning and the way we delivered it in different ways. And he encouraged people to think about this, that if we are the world leader in testing and research, we have an obligation to do more than to simply deliver scores to people. We have an obligation to show people what the scores mean, okay, how they translate to learning, and what we might be able to do to encourage people to figure out innovative ways to teach and learn. So 6 years of innovation has resulted in increased emphasis on listening to and responding to markets. This is an extremely important point, probably seems very elementary to most of you out there. But the reality is that in an organization like ETS, located in Princeton, New Jersey, it had been a monolithic organization for years and years. Okay, it was used to sort of developing whatever it needed to develop in the areas of testing and research, and then just sort of dictating to the marketplace how it should be used. Kurt turned that around. He said, no, we're not going to give up our core competencies, but we're going to utilize them in a different way. Okay, we're going to start listening to what the market needs are, and we're going to put our resources to use to meet those needs rather than dictating to the market what it wants. Now, this is, seems like a fundamental sort of way of operating, but it wasn't for an organization like ETS, that, again, operated in a monolithic sort of environment in Princeton, New Jersey. Okay? What Kurt did is he consolidated ETS into 3 strategic business units. And the 3 that started all of this were dedicated to, one was dedicated to higher education, one was dedicated to elementary and secondary education, and one was dedicated to global impact. So those 3 strategic business units, which emerged in about 2002, okay, after we had some time to start changing the culture a little bit, what they did is each of those business units had a mission to operate in a business manner in the way that they approached the marketplace. And so, there was a lot of listening that was going on by the leadership in those divisions, a lot of integration with ETS resources in different ways, and it was used to sort of build the business environment that Kurt was charged with when he came to ETS. Well, as you saw from the earlier slide and the earlier fact that I gave you, it started to kick in almost right away as revenues started to increase because we were listening to the markets rather than dictating to the markets. At the same time, ETS needed a massive amount of infrastructural change. The company was way behind in its use of technology, and so we had massive investments into the technology. We also changed some of the leadership and brought in some people that had a little bit more business orientation, but also a strong commitment to the ongoing ETS mission, all very important. These 3 business units still operating today, still driving the revenues for ETS today, all of them operating in a very, very significantly different manner today that is driving ETS toward new goals and toward a new impact. Now, Out of all of that, though, we started to realize that despite all the progress, something was missing. Now, how do we know something was missing? Well, because our researchers are on top of all of the statistics about education, and there are a number that are very disturbing out there. So we started to look at our own research. 70% of high school grads lack fundamental applied skills. So they come out of school and they can't go into the simplest jobs in the marketplace. These applied skills are a big factor that need to be addressed if we're going to be upgrading, the quality of our workforce. 40% of employers say grads lack basic reading, writing, and math skills. Okay, so when you sit down with executives of corporations, they'll tell you, that 2 out of every 5 people that come into their companies right out of high school lack these skills. In writing alone, if you just take that one area, 81% of employers say their graduates lack basic English writing skills. Okay? Employers also say that people coming out of high school lack foreign language, a sense of cultural differences, and an awareness of global markets. And employers of hourly workers, okay, they reject applicants regularly because of inadequate basic employability skills. So you take an organization like ETS with our not-for-profit commitment to driving education in a meaningful way worldwide, and you look at the kind of cultural change that we started to implement in 2000, but then you look at these kind of statistics staring us in the face, we had to do something about it. Okay, so we continue to sort of look at some of the areas. Okay, more disturbing statistics. Employment rates for teens decreasing. This is, I think, a particularly significant one, especially when you think about what you've read about dropout rates in schools. Look at the statistics here. Okay, in 1979, 49% of teens were employed. Okay, these are kids who were going to school, okay, but at the same time they held some sort of part-time job. Okay, now the benefit of that, obviously, is in many cases, they were in families that needed the income from the part-time jobs that they held, but also they were learning on-the-job employability skills. Okay, that, held fairly well until 2000, even going into 2000. 45%, a fairly minor drop over that stretch of time, but still, a drop. So that was sort of the first indication to us that something disturbing was going on. When we studied the market in 2004, we saw that the percentage of teens working had declined to 36%. It was the largest decline in the workforce of any age group. Okay, now the significance of that, of course, is magnified when you understand that many of the teens that were no longer being able to find jobs in the marketplace while they were going to school were teens whose families needed the income the most. And so what happens is they start to drop out of school. They start to look for other ways to make money. They start to think if there isn't some way of moving their families along financially other than following sort of a traditional track. And that doesn't always translate into productive kind of work opportunities for those kids. The societal impact is huge. We released a study a couple of weeks ago called America's Perfect Storm. It's gotten a lot of publicity around the country. Okay, but basically what it says is this: there's a convergence of education and demographic and economic forces that, if not attended to immediately, will have a serious impact in the decline in U.S. global competitiveness. All of these 3 areas, education, demographics, and economics, are all coming together. And when you talk to employers, you talk to corporate leaders, you talk to the general public, you talk to educators, talk to sociologists, they will all tell you basically the same thing. They give us about 10 years at the outside to really start making an impact that will affect these statistics. Otherwise, we're going to be paying for this by a serious decline in our competitiveness. A number of people have written about this, and I've chosen 3 quotes to just sort of share with you. This first one is from the research report from ETS called The Perfect Storm. one that I just referred to. And if you just look at this and what the observation of our researchers, Irwin Kirsch, Henry Brown, and Kentaro Yamamoto, the conclusions that they're reaching in the Perfect Storm report, very disturbing. But they're talking about here in this excerpt the mismatch between the fundamental skill sets in literacy and numeracy that people, and not just focusing on teens, but young people extending up into about the age 25 or so, that the lack of literacy and numeracy skills is so significant in that group that not only are they going to have difficulty finding jobs, especially in the age of technology, but they're going to have difficulty in even managing their own lives effectively. Okay, many of you have probably read The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. Now, Friedman's book came out a couple of years before A Perfect Storm, the ETS research report. But Friedman said then, a couple of years back when his book was first published, the crisis is already here. So it's a more immediate sense. It's playing out in slow motion. We have within our society all the ingredients for American individuals to thrive in this world, but if we squander these ingredients, we will stagnate. So we have the ingredients. And if you follow Friedman regularly, he is always talking about the fact that we can do something about it. But we have to act quickly, and we have to act with a significant dedication to apply our resources to where the problems really exist. And the final quote that I've chosen to just sort of share with you today is an adaptation of Moore's Law, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, that appears in a book called Radical Evolution by Joel Garreau. Joel's book came out a couple of months after The World is Flat. And his book didn't get quite the recognition that The World is Flat has gotten. But I encourage you to read Radical Evolution by Joel Garreau. It's a little different take, okay, on the current state of things. But Joel focuses more in depth on some of the technology that's in place and some of the potential for that technology that's actually being explored through different organizations. It's a fascinating book. And this particular quote, I think, and I've talked about it with other officers at ETS, is particularly disturbing because the power of information technology doubling every 18 months for as far as the eye can see, as long as we can see it. When Moore first talked about this in 1965, he was considered to be making a bold prediction because he said at that time it would double every year for about the next 20 years. Well, it's actually increased at a faster rate than that, and Garreau and others that Garreau interviews in his book believe that it'll double every 18 months, and they don't see any end to that. So, at ETS, we look at these things very seriously, and we try to figure out ways that we can respond. So ETS is responding. One of the ways that we responded is by establishing the business unit that I'm the head of, the Interactive Learning Business Unit. It's ETS's fourth and most progressive strategic business unit, but it didn't just emerge overnight by looking at statistics. Okay? This has been something that has been going on since the day that I walked into ETS and talked with Kurt about my vision for where I thought we could use the resources for ETS in a way that was going to make the most dramatic impact. So it's been 6 years of studying ETS capabilities. It's been 2 years of analyzing new approaches to learning. Okay, now, 2 years ago, Kurt Landgraf gave me the opportunity while I was running another division of ETS, and he said, okay, look, I think the time is right for you to start looking at the idea that you've had about taking our capabilities, adapting them, repackaging them, and coming up with creative ways to apply them to new markets. So he said, I'm going to give you a small amount of money. Go figure out what this will look like and how to make it happen. Well, ETS has wonderful resources in many areas, but we do not have great resources in cutting-edge design and adaptation of capabilities for the marketplace. And so at that point, did a little bit of investigation, and I was led to Frog Design, their New York offices. And Frog Design, many of you probably already know, they have their own wonderful history about their creative work in the area of design. And it was at that point, 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now, that I started to see the potential for how ETS resources could be packaged in creative ways. Working with a few of the young people at Frog, with just me and one or two other sort of trusted colleagues from ETS, we had several brainstorming sessions. And what I did is I sort of gave the Frog team this big view of what I thought we could do with all of the resources that we had. But I was perfectly honest with them in saying that I don't know how to make this happen. I don't know what it is going to look like. And in a period of about 3 months, the Frog team came up with 4 innovative designs for packaging ETS intellectual property in unique ways and applying it directly into the education marketplace. And they range from handheld devices through computer chips that could be planted in a community on important historic sites, for example, that would then be beamed back into a central computer located in a school so that kids in that school could learn about their community and then go out into the community and try and find these embedded chips in some of these different sites around the community place. And so it was an interesting thing that happened at that point. I brought the Frog team to ETS to meet with a couple of folks from, that I thought were really on board with all of this kind of innovative thinking. And I must tell you that I was disappointed in the impact. Not because Frog didn't do a good job, but our own people at ETS, you could see them starting to just sort of go back into the old culture. They weren't comfortable. They weren't comfortable with what they were hearing. And one of them even said in front of the Frog team, "This isn't what ETS is about. This is not what ETS is about. This is something different, something that somebody else would do." Okay. However, we had succeeded by bringing Frog in challenging people's thinking. So then it became up to me, after Frog left, to spend the next couple of weeks and months to sort of go around and challenge people and challenge their thinking and say, why do you think this isn't what ETS is about? Who says it's not what ETS is about? If we are about driving learning around the world in unique ways, then this is exactly what we're about. Because you know what? The world is changing, and the way kids learn is changing significantly. So then, a couple of people that also bought into this established a business case. I had a couple of other folks did it. I was just a consultant to this because I thought it would be smart to have the buy-in of a couple of other people that believed in this. They established the business case. They showed that the ETS culture could shift from market reactive to market responsive in these creative areas. And so the result of that was that we got enough support around ETS so that last year, 2006, starting in January, a year ago, while I was running communications and public affairs for ETS at the time, Kurt said to me, I also want you now to incubate what he called the Family Market Initiative. Okay, so working again with Frog Design and a small team of our own researchers who by this time had really bought into what we were doing, had gotten very excited about it, and had seen the value of what we were proposing, we incubated the Family Market Initiative. And in the course of that year, we analyzed interfaces with technology and media, and we strengthened our commitments internally at ETS to do these things. So this was my job while much more capable and creative people were doing the creative work in the Family Market Initiative. My job was to make sure that people around ETS understood what we were doing, how it was consistent with our mission, how we were applying our capabilities in ways that were consistent with the mission, how we were just taking the intellectual, we weren't changing the intellectual property, we were honoring the intellectual property by figuring out how to adapt it to trends in communication, entertainment, individualism, and globalization. The phrase that I found that made the most impact with people is I would say to them, look, all we are doing is making learning portable. And I would usually add something to that went like this. If you think that the only place kids are learning today is in a classroom that basically looks the same today as it looked in the 1940s, you're going to have to look more closely at the way kids interact with one another, because their learning potential is much greater outside of traditional school buildings than it is inside traditional school buildings. And you know what? People started to really look closely at that. They also started to look at some of the work that was ongoing with frog design. And we started to show people that we could innovate and keep innovating. But then this final bullet, extremely important. We got the buy-in of several world-class partners. These were people who were intrigued by the fact that an organization with the kind of reputation for quality like ETS was engaging in this kind of interactive learning opportunity in the marketplace, and world-class partners were opening their doors to us to listen to me and members of my team come in and talk to them about this potential. And by the end of the year, we had several opportunities on the table. I was really interested in only one at that point, and we signed a deal with Microsoft toward the end of 2006, small deal at the time, but that continues to grow today. And it doesn't prohibit us from talking to other organizations about interacting with us. So what's emerging? We now have a product catalog in interactive learning. Some of the things that are in it, the Whammy suite, it's short for Who Am I? We don't know if we like Whammy, but we're using it for now. Okay, the Whammy suite, it's a series of non-cognitive assessments that kids can take on their own, but it feels to them like they're playing a game. But what they're really getting is information about how they learn. And what parents are getting are recommendations from ETS, the world leader in education, recommendations from ETS about what parents might do to help stimulate learning based on the results of what the Whammy suite is showing. We have just finished piloting a product called Proofwriter. Proofwriter is a one-shot opportunity to just take any piece of writing and get immediate feedback on how you can improve it, along with a whole range of suggestions about where you might look for additional resources, all from ETS research. We have the product concept for something called Jabara, which is a sort of a mystery game. But in order to solve the mystery, you have to use algebraic principles to get from one point to another. But a kid can play the game without ever really realizing that he or she is using algebraic principles to get from one point to another. Parents, however, who see their child playing this game, which again, it's only in concept right now, it's not actually available, but parents can click on a button at the end of the day, and they can see all of the different kind of algebraic principles that the kid applied to solve the mysteries in this game. Okay, we have mobile applications that we're looking at. LearnerSnapshot.com is in parentheses because eventually we'll have our own site that's called Learner Snapshot. Learner Snapshot is something that we're developing for parents so that parents can, after we analyze what kids are learning from the different games and mobile applications that they're engaged in, parents can go to Learner Snapshot and get a whole picture of what their kid is learning. I'm going to show you one illustration of that in just a moment. We are continuing to evaluate partnership opportunities, and we are willing to listen to anybody who wants to talk about a partnership opportunity, as long as they understand that ETS is a not-for-profit, mission-driven organization that is in this for the long haul. We're not interested in a one-shot kind of an opportunity. Okay? We have to be convinced that there's a long-range commitment before we will say okay to prospective partners. Right now, we've got a top tier of about 7 prospective partners that we're looking at very closely with, because all of them have expressed that kind of interest. Corporate initiatives, okay, we have several things now. We've expanded the interactive learning outside of just looking at families to looking at the corporation. And we've instituted a phrase around ETS that I think really shows how ETS looks at the corporate side. We're talking to people in corporations to think about corporations as learning institutions. The corporation as a learning institution. You're a corporation, you make an investment in people, you want your people to learn. You want your people to stay with you. You want your people to grow. ETS is developing products that can help you do that we would sell right into the corporate environment. And we're always looking for and evaluating foundation partnerships. It's an essential part of the way we do business. So very quickly here, what does the ETS R&D, intellectual property, look like when it's adapted by interactive learning with the help of our friends from Frog Design? Well, these are some quick pictures of what we're developing that are unlike anything else that ETS has ever done. And now I'm happy to say that people around ETS have gotten used to seeing this kind of stuff from our division, and in most cases, they can't wait to see the next iterations of what we're developing. So quickly here, this is just one conceptualization called My Brain of what Learner Snapshot might look like. So I talked earlier about the whammy suite, and the kid takes these non-cognitive assessments, doesn't even feel like assessments. They're fun things, little things for a kid to play with. Okay, well, it feeds into something called the Learner Snapshot, and this is one conceptualization of it called My Brain, where if we go with this conceptualization, you can actually see different strengths of the kid growing as he or she plays different games, engages in different mobile activities, engages in even conversational opportunities with friends. Okay, it'll all feed into the Learner Snapshot, okay, and we've created this conceptualization of what a kid's brain would look like. And what happens is, you see all of these different sort of tiers, okay, as the kid gets stronger in writing, okay, that tier will grow. And if one tier starts to grow too much stronger than the other, a parent might look at it and say, you know what, we need to figure out, she's doing great in mathematics, but we need to do something about, her writing because she's not paying enough attention to it. Another conceptualization, I mentioned Jabara, okay, the game that really is driven by algebraic principles. Okay, this is what, one of the screenshots for Jabara looks like. And again, we've got this in a proof of concept, and, we can fool with it in a, interactive way, and so you can actually see, a version of how a kid would get from one point to another by using these algebraic principles. And then the final one that I just want to give you a quick look at is called the Spelling Superhero Sidekick. Okay, this little mobile device, okay, or it can be embedded into an existing mobile device, okay, actually will talk to, okay, they get to pick from different avatars, different images to be their sidekick. And this sidekick will say to the kid, spell monarchy. Oh gosh, I had to pick one that I can't spell. Well, I won't try to spell it. It'll give the kid words, and the kid punches in and tries to spell it. If the kid doesn't get it right, it gives you another opportunity. It gives you hints about how to spell. Okay, so again, it's not just like right or wrong. It's about learning. So it gives hints. It makes suggestions. It shows what the word would sound like if used in a sentence, so that in case the child isn't familiar with the word, okay, sometimes the contextual usage triggers a response. And then, of course, once the child, gets it right, there's all kinds of fireworks and stuff that go off on the screen. But the other thing that you can do with this is you can use it to feed right into the Learner Snapshot. Okay? So those are some of the things that we're doing. There's a perfect storm. It's a flat world. There's a radical evolution going on. That evolution involves the schoolhouse. Okay? It involves mobile devices. It involves industry. It certainly involves technology. We are now looking at things at ETS, though, as a world of potential, and that's for interactive learning, for our research and development people, for ETS. Thank you.